Welcome back to the Marvel Movie Minute, a daily podcast in which we assemble to explore the films of the Marvel Cinematic Universe 1 minute at a time. In this, our 6th season, we are looking at The Avengers. I'm Andy Nelson from the Next Reel Film Podcast.
I'm Pete Wright. You really think I'm pretty?
Today we're talking about Minute 14, which begins with Natasha's question and ends with the middle of an interrogation. Back on the show, it's Phillip Mottaz. Hello, Phillip.
Hello, Andy and Pete. I'm glad to be here.
Yay!
So the start of this minute, we were talking a little bit about our the director of this film. We like to refer to him as Tig Notaro when we can. The opening line of this particular minute, this is Natasha responding to Luchkov when he in yesterday's minute says, turns out the Black Widow is nothing but a pretty face. And she says, "You really think I'm pretty?" Is this the other part of the frustration people have as far as the way that our director would write his characters, do you think? Because I know we were debating, what are the things that stand out in this scene that make it possibly problematic?
That's hard. I mean, in watching it today and seeing the way she says it, number one, it's still pretty funny.
Yeah.
Actually, numbers 1 through 10, it's still pretty funny. And I realized today that I thought she smiled when she said it, in my memory, but she kind of says it menacing in a way. So maybe my thing coming out of this is I'm giving Scarlett Johansson all the credit now, where there's ways you could have done that where it would have been more, say Michael Bay to Megan Fox in the Transformers movie. And this just seems like I'm in control of you, idiot, sarcastic response that So I don't know if that quite answers your question, but that's what I noticed today.
It's interesting because I look at him she seems is she playing it like she's meant to be a little, almost ditzy, or not ditzy is the wrong word, but kind of in that mentality of thrilled when somebody thinks that she's pretty. It almost seems is that the play she's going for here by even saying that line? Because why does she need to say this as part of the way that she's approaching this person, other than making him think that Black Widow isn't anything more than that?
It's a power move. Right? I mean, it's her saying, I am so comfortable, I can be sarcastic right now.
I think she's being sarcastic?
You don't get the joke. Yes, I can't think of any other reason that she would say this line. It's because she recognizes what these guys don't, and that is she's in the position of authority here. And I think that's the most important thing about this sequence, is that she maintained control in spite of being constrained.
And he just rattled off a bunch of menacing things about, your information's outdated and here's all our loot and you're going to do this and I'm totally in charge. And, I just happened to mention you as just another pretty face. And she was like, "You really think I'm pretty?"
The only thing she gets.
She does not. And she's also playing this guy. So if she's playing this guy to keep, her words are eventually going to be this moron's giving me everything. It was then she shouldn't say, well, what else have you been stealing? She distracts a little bit and disarms. And
yeah, well, and I guess that's what I'm saying, because obviously she's playing him here by acting this way, but it is a performance. She's very specifically responding in this way to his line. And so that's where I don't feel like the intention. Well, I guess I'm trying to figure out the intention of the performance is she wanting him to think she's being sarcastic with him, or is she wanting him to think I'm flattered by the fact that you actually might think that? Do you think that he's meant to read, oh, this is her being sarcastic now?
I think he's supposed to catch that she's being sarcastic now.
I think she is too, but this might give us a chance to talk about that often ignored subject of diegetic sarcasm. Is this something that we as the audience are meant to hear as sarcastic, even as the Russian threat is meant to hear it as something different?
Well, and that's what I think is interesting, especially on rewatch, because we know, especially on rewatch, how she's approaching this whole scene. The fact that she really is in complete control of this particular situation. And as a viewer, first-time viewer, we don't necessarily think that. And so having that knowledge certainly makes us realize how she's saying things, why she's saying things. But I just, because as I see his reaction to her comment there, I don't necessarily think that he's responding to this. She just doesn't know when to quit. Like, she just keeps being sarcastic and saying these things, but she doesn't realize that we have her in, we're going to pull her teeth out or whatever, And so I like the way that you defined that, though, Pete.
Yeah, and I guess my vote, I'm still falling down on, what do you say, diegetic sarcasm.
Diegetic sarcasm, yeah.
Because he's played this move of saying, your information's outdated and whatever, and I'm in charge. And it doesn't rattle her. So then, and she displays that. So then his response is like, okay, well then we got to go over to the neatly placed out torture tools and get those, So I think she is honestly, if you can honestly be sarcastic, I think she's honestly doing that in that moment.
Well, and how much do you feel like the team here has decided, people who see this movie, if you are a first time viewer, then maybe you'll have one experience, but our expectation is when you see Natasha Romanoff, you will know the levels of ass which she can kick because you've seen her do it before.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and having seen Iron Man 2, anyone who's been following the Marvel Cinematic Universe knows that. They know she can take these people down.
Unwavered.
Yeah. So, I mean, I definitely, I think that you're both convincing me of all of this. Because I just, at the start of this, with this particular line, it did make me question some things. But maybe that's more to my question about the director using this particular response as the choice that he used in scripting this. That likely is perhaps one of those elements that people question. It's like putting her in this place where she's going to say a line like this, which makes her seem less than of a character. But I don't know. Maybe because of the director and his approach to women, I end up reading more into this than I should.
Yeah, I think that's it. What was the Jennifer Lawrence movie where she was literally a Russian spy who used sex to kill her targets?
Red Sparrow?
Red Sparrow. Like
not Black Widow.
Red Sparrow. Not Black Widow, Red Sparrow. This is Red Sparrow, and that is not problematic. And you know what I mean? Like that's what we were talking about earlier in the week. It was like the benefit and the curse of hindsight and context.
Yes.
This is an action sequence that plays well of somebody in a position of both sexual and physical authority. And over the course of 3 minutes, we get to see her dominate a bunch of visibly powerful men. And that is exciting. It is titillating. It is powerful. It is all of those things at once. And only through the lens of the Tig Notaro factor do we get creeped out by it. I think that's the thing where I come down on it.
It's funny too. I guess we're always going to be doing this, but how much you give the credit to the director, or how much the directors, what we know about them, in this case him, how we apply it to the movie. And I'm not saying that there isn't threads in there, but it is funny that I guarantee my 13-year-old has no idea about any of that stuff with Tig Notaro, and that he is just that scene's great. It's now taken on face value. It's great.
It's great. And you know what? I've never once had a problem with my daughter, who when we first saw this was of that age. And I never had a problem with her seeing it. And she thinks Black Widow's a badass. That's exactly what we want out of that, is a heroic figure that she can follow and see get out of scrapes and troubles. And the fact is, Scarlett Johansson portrayed the character this way and made some choices. And if we were just pulling apart a psychic barber, it'd be your fault.
Right.
But this is a team of people who made these choices.
One day.
I
can't wait.
On the page-by-page analysis.
Yeah.
Yep. That's wow. Now you're talking fonts.
I don't know if there's really any answer that any of us are going to come to, but I do think, these are valuable conversations to have with these minutes. And I think it makes for an interesting just discussion to kind of get a read of all of this. Yeah.
It's what we're thinking about it now too. You can't help but have it come up because it's also, I've been thinking a lot lately about, like the sort of like power fantasy that people give to directors, auteur theory, all that stuff, and how easy it is or can be to say like, this movie's great because he's great. Like, I mean, it's first of all, it's, wildly reductive, but number two, it's like, I'm sure he contributed some good things to it. It sounds like he also did some not so good things to it, but there's a lot of people who went into this that made this movie work. If they didn't show up, then, it doesn't work. So some of this discussion is healthy in that way to be like, don't assign everything and all responsibility to one, usually dude. Because historically that is not working out. So we should try to value the efforts of people and try to weed out creeps and that kind of stuff. I don't know. I'm losing my train of thought on that. I appreciate the discussion.
Yeah.
And I think, we get like, so we spend so much time sort of thinking through all these things that I want to make sure we get back to the fact that the shield pivot badass moment is right here. Like that phone rings and that's awesome. That is a Phil Coulson digital hero moment.
Well, and it's and it's a great filmmaker tool that I think films like this use very effectively, where we have a serious scene, there's tense music. Yes, there's some cheeky responses perhaps from Natasha, but the whole thing is built in such a serious way. And then, of course, we're going to pulling some teeth in this whole idea. I don't know why he suddenly decides to start talking English. They all speak Russian here. But anyway, he decides to start talking English. And then the phone rings, and it is very much a punctuation mark because it rings, it breaks the silence, but it also ends all the serious music. And suddenly it's like the whole tone of the scene has shifted. And I found that to be incredibly effective, the way that it plays. And it does, as soon as the phone rings and the guy answers it and it's for her, it's very funny. And that is this signal that now we're shifting and we're in a totally different territory at this point.
I have a bit of a theory, I think, as to why he starts speaking English.
Okay.
So just a little bit. And most of it is like the writers and performers and the movie makers. But I think, number one, that last line is really good. That punchline of you may have to write it down is great. And it probably plays better hearing it rather than reading it.
Right.
Number two, in universe, it also shows us that in a minute, Natasha's going to be speaking English. This guy's going to hear you.
Yeah.
So that is the last time that we think, oh my God, watch out what you say. But in a couple seconds, she's going to tell this guy, she's an open book because this guy can't do anything to her. And like, I'm going to tell him everything I'm going to do to him. And he's like, I didn't tell her, he's clearly, it's like it's like a fake power play in the moment that then sort of allows us to be like, we're in English the rest of the time because it doesn't matter. Your part in this story is about to be over.
It's that written element where it does feel written, but to your point, it makes perfect sense for the script. Like we want to have that shift because we need to know that he understands English for this whole conversation that's about to take place.
Right.
And it's that roller coaster between action, drama, intensity, emotion, comedy.
Yes.
We're at the phone rings and we're at comedy now. Yeah. And I'm here
once
for
we hear
too.
Coulson's voice, especially. It's like Coulson.
I'm surprised he doesn't just drive around in a clown car all day long.
Well,
Clown Acura.
Clown Acura, is that what you said? Clown Acura. That's very good.
He's always been very much like a comedic character through the films up to this point. This is his fifth appearance in the MCU. Is that right? Fourth appearance, I guess. And it's always been kind of this schlubby guy who's kind of like helping Shield, and he's the one who gets sent out to go figure out what landed in the middle of the desert. Go wrangle Tony Stark or whatever. Like, he's always this guy, and so the start of this film actually has been a little bit of a surprise, seeing him in the thick of action for a change. But this kind of goes back to what we know of him up to this point, because we didn't have a TV show yet, and so here we're getting this thing where he's on the phone. And it just plays very funny as he kind of tells him, hey, give the woman the phone, because otherwise we're going to blow up your whole block. And it just plays so funny.
It's really good. It's fantastic. I have a question for the panel. Did he say, he says the address of where they are? Is it Zelensky Plaza?
It's Solensky.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, talk about your
that would have
been
readings.
Right? I'm like, whoa. Yeah. Okay, then withdrawn. But yeah, Coulson's great, and I forget the actor's name, but it's fun to see him. I don't know if I would use the word schlubby, but I do get
maybe it's the wrong word.
I do get I know what you're saying though. Is like, he's not a barrel-chested action star. He looks like a put-together dad who works an actuarial job that happens to be on a helicarrier surrounded by superhumans.
That's exactly it.
And he's completely unflappable. He, like everybody else in S.H.I.E.L.D. is like, well, we're 10 steps ahead of everybody. So just please make my day easier by giving this. He's more just both his dialogue and Black Widow's are kind of like annoyed parents. Like her saying, it's like, I'm working, I swear I've said that to my family when I'm doing something. They're asking me some random question about like the internet password or whatever. It's like, I'm kind of busy right now.
I don't care about the Wi-Fi right now.
No, I'm actually doing this.
Absolutely.
Which then lowers the stakes of what she is doing in a way, which is even funnier.
Yeah, totally.
And this goes
precedent.
And this goes to, that the old Whedon twist of that gender expectation that we have of how a scene like this is going to play. And this is something that over the course of his career, we kind of mentioned this in yesterday's episode, that he's very well known for the way that you would play with what we expect in kind of the role of gender. And here, as she takes the phone and has this conversation that is very, very work-like as far as what she's talking about with Coulson, but then this whole thing, like, I'm in the middle of an interrogation, and that's kind of where the minute cuts off, but the way that it plays, where she's in the middle of an interrogation, and, like, that is our first sign that, wait a minute, okay, this is a totally different viewpoint than what I've been seeing here, and now we're going to get the other view, which we'll talk about in tomorrow's minute.
I would even say, instead of the first sign, that's the confirmation of it.
Yes.
That like,
exactly.
The phone call interrupting them, having the power to interrupt them, first of all, it was like, oh, that's something weird. And then when he says, give her the phone, and she's kind of not surprised by it, but, more put out. And just, it's a funny, anyway, we can read into it whatever we want, but it is a funny angle to have like your super spy tied up, but have to do that awkward, like, hold the phone yourself move. It just, I can't stop saying it. It reminds me of my mom on the phone when we were kids, and she's making lunches for us and we're asking her about crayons or whatever. She's like, I'm in the middle of something here.
Right.
And
sure.
she plays it so well, and it's great.
Back when phones were bigger and easier to hold that way.
Yeah, that helps. Yeah. That helps.
Goes with it.
At times, now, oh, forget it.
Right.
Yeah, this is a scene that would get worse with speakerphones.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Because the physicality of her having to hold the phone is better than because now you'd be like, put me on speaker, and then you do this whole thing. And like, no, it's better that she has to hold it, because it's just like a little awkward, but also so pedestrian.
Yeah. Well, it's playing with our expectations for a scene like this, and that's where the comedy comes from, and that's why it works so well. Because we've seen scenes like this in countless spy movies where somebody's being interrogated and roughed up, and then they have to figure out how am I going to get out of this. But and we're going to get that, but we get this break in the middle of it that pushes us into that, where because essentially she's being interrupted because of the whole Avengers initiative thing, yada yada yada. But that break is what she needs to say, well, that's so much for this mission. I need to wrap things up so I can get out and, go talk to the big guy.
And that makes it even funnier too, that like, when you think about how are we going to introduce these characters, not usually, like they make a ton of Avengers movies, but I think a lot of effective introductions of characters are in media res, or like, this is where they usually are. So like, we'll eventually see the Hulk and he's like hidden away, and we get Captain America where he's punching the thing, and it's like, okay, this is where they usually are, right? And here you can just see the writers like putting it together. It's like, okay, well, Black Widow is usually on a spy mission, so okay, she's kind of doing that. But we don't have a lot of time to explain that spy mission, so why don't we set it up really heavy to immediately deflate it and just get on with our lives? And the get on with our lives is the extra punchline to be like, she could have killed these guys in any moment. But the fact that she got interrupted, it was like, no, fine, I'll dispatch these guys real easy is great. And so I like that sort of screenwriting economy to be like, well, here's who she is in terms of where she normally is. And then we're going to get a real display of who she is, how she deals with those situations. And that's her introduction.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, all at once. Very efficient. And, we introduced Infinity War 2 minutes ago. We're introducing the building the team sequence already here.
Yeah.
And because we started with Coulson finding her, and now she's going to go find someone else. And I think that's, now we're into the full-on sort of Ocean's 11 tropey, let's build everybody together. And that starts with these minutes of her in action. Give them something exciting to do.
Give it the phone call. Yeah. It all starts with this phone call. Well, that's a good place to wrap up today's minute. We will get to finish this scene tomorrow and see how it all plays out. So let's call it quits. And Philip, tell us again about this psychic.
About the psychic who cuts hair and solves mysteries.
Yes.
Yeah, my mystery novels are for sale. They are in the Psychic Barber Mysteries series, the only one I know of.
I thought you were going to say the Psychic Barber Mystery aisle.
Very small section in Powell's.
Yeah. Look for them where all those mystery psychic barbers are sold. The second one, the homicidal hairstyle of the viral video vixen, came out earlier this year. And the first one I dealt with sort of like Los Angeles politics and schools and stuff like that. And the second one, she gets involved with the viral video industry as someone has gone missing. And yeah, you can find those. And they'll have links for my name. I always feel weird telling people, first of all, how to use Google, but second, my name is never spells like it sounds or sounds like it spells. So look at your show notes and then click on me, and then you'll be set. These guys will take care of you.
There you go. And if you're not seeing the show notes in your app or in whatever podcatcher you're listening to, definitely check the website. We always make sure they're there. So. All right, well, that's it for today. We'll be back tomorrow to wrap up the week with Minute 15. So, Pete, thanks as always.
Hello? Andy's still talking.
Until next time, true believers.
Did I freeze? Andy's totally frozen and silent. Marvel Movie Minute is a production of True Story FM, engineering by Andy Nelson. This season's music is Message to the World by Anthony Vega, and this season's show art is by Winston Yavo. Find the show at truestory.fm. If your podcast app allows ratings and reviews, please consider doing that for our show.